The email wasn't addressed to Karoline Levitt, not officially. It was part of an exclusive event for high-profile women in politics and media, an invitation to an elite summit in Manhattan. The event was titled Future of Female Leadership, and at the top of the speaker list was none other than Hillary Clinton. Karoline wasn't mentioned in the press release. She wasn't listed on the program. Yet the email had found its way into her inbox. It could have been a mistake, or maybe, just maybe, it had been sent deliberately. The idea that someone might have deliberately reached out to her was almost laughable, but it also spoke to the nature of Karoline. She never let anyone decide her place in the world. For most, the obvious course of action would be to ignore it. After all, showing up to an event where you clearly weren't wanted wasn't just risky, it was political suicide. But Karoline wasn't like most people. She'd been excluded before, mocked, dismissed, told to wait her turn. As the daughter of a New Hampshire working-class family, she hadn't grown up surrounded by political royalty. She hadn't been groomed for power. Everything she had, every inch of progress, had been earned through grit, unapologetic values, and an unshakable belief that the truth didn't need anyone's permission to be spoken. So, she booked her flight and didn't tell a soul. When Karoline arrived at the Conrad Ballroom that afternoon, the air was thick with practiced smiles and scripted confidence. The room was filled with tailored power suits in shades of blue and ivory. Every table had carefully arranged name cards, but none bore her name. It was as though she didn't belong in the room, yet her presence was undeniable. Karoline didn't walk in loud or with drama. Her confidence was quieter than thunder, but it was more disarming. It sliced through the atmosphere like a sharp breeze cutting through silk. The host tried to direct Karoline to the back of the room. "The press table is over there," the woman said with a tight smile, clearly mistaking Karoline for staff. Karoline smiled back politely and didn't budge. She wasn't there to hide. She was there to be seen. Somewhere near the stage, Hillary Clinton was reviewing her notes. She looked up, saw Karoline in the crowd, and furrowed her brow. She leaned over to a handler and whispered, "Who let her in?" The answer was simple. No one. Karoline had let herself in, and she wasn't planning to leave quietly. Backstage preparations were in full swing. The microphones were being tested. Water bottles were aligned. Hillary Clinton stood behind the curtain, a calm conversation with her chief of staff unfolding. Whispers floated through the air. "She wasn't invited," Hillary said, her voice low but unmistakably irritated. "She's not on the list. Not even the waiting list. And now she's here." The aide tried to brush it off. "She's not speaking. Let's keep it smooth. Don't give her the spotlight." But Karoline didn't need anyone to give her anything. She was already making herself known. On social media, people had started to talk. Karoline Levitt just walked into Hillary's turf. Something's coming. The crowd could feel the buzz. Some whispered her name in curiosity, others in surprise or quiet admiration. A young intern approached Karoline near the aisle. The intern's clipboard shook in her hands. "Ma'am," she stammered, "I was told to let you know that this isn't an open forum. Only confirmed speakers will be given mic access." Karoline tilted her head slightly and replied, calm as ever, "That's fine. I don't need a mic to speak. I just need to be heard." The intern blinked, unsure whether she was being threatened or inspired. She quickly turned and fled. Across the ballroom, the tension was rising, thick and palpable, as attendees checked their phones. Karoline's name had already started trending. Backstage, Hillary clenched her jaw. "She's going to pull something," she muttered, her voice sharp and low. "She always does." The stage manager came forward with a clipboard, signaling that it was time for Hillary to take the stage. Hillary took a deep breath, steadied herself, and walked into the spotlight. She was a seasoned politician, a global figure who had weathered decades in the political spotlight, but as she stepped up, something was different. For the first time in a long time, there was uncertainty in the air. The audience erupted into applause as Hillary took the stage, but as the sound of clapping filled the room, it was met with a strange undertone. A break in the applause as cameras shifted slightly, capturing not just Hillary, but also the woman seated in the front row, unmoving, still, and completely unreadable, Karoline Levitt. She wasn't clapping, she wasn't smiling, and in that moment, everyone in the room felt it. The stillness of one pair of hands cut louder than the applause. Hillary smiled, but her eyes quickly scanned the room, landing on Karoline for just a second. It was a sharp, frozen moment. Then Hillary continued her speech. "We are at a critical juncture," Hillary began. "Not just for women, but for the soul of democracy. We need voices that are tested, voices tempered by wisdom, not simply loud." The words were polished, smooth, and strategic, but everyone knew exactly who they were meant for. Karoline didn't flinch. As Hillary continued, she cleverly wove in subtle digs, referencing reckless newcomers, TikTok ideologues, and those who rise too fast without knowing what the job really requires. It was an expertly delivered masterclass in political condescension. Karoline sat silently, her face unreadable. She pulled out a notebook and began to write. A few attendees nearby stole glances, whispering to each other that she was likely writing a response. On stage, Hillary pushed on, "There is a difference between having a platform and having something to say." She glanced at Karoline. The tension in the room increased. And then it happened. Karoline slowly closed her notebook and stood up. There was no announcement, no microphone, just a presence. The room went silent. Hillary faltered, her next sentence hanging in the air as Karoline turned to face the crowd, standing tall without permission. She wasn't on the program, not invited to speak, but in that moment, the entire ballroom belonged to her. The silence in the room stretched, hanging heavy in the air before Karoline spoke. "I was told to sit back," she said, her voice calm, firm. "Told that experience mattered more than conviction. But the truth is, some of us weren't born into invitations. We weren't handed microphones. We had to show up and speak anyway." She didn't say Hillary's name, but the message was crystal clear. Karoline was the defiant new voice that could no longer be ignored. She didn't need permission to stand up. Phones were out, recording every moment. Hillary looked off stage, her handler mouthing, "Do we cut her mic?" Hillary muttered, "There is no mic." Karoline turned slightly, not in defiance, but in clarity. "This movement isn't about resumes," she continued. "It's about truth, and I don't need a script to tell mine." The room erupted into applause. It wasn't planned. It wasn't part of the program. It wasn't staged. It was raw, real, and earned. Hillary's fingers gripped the podium tighter. Her speech had lost its power. Karoline's moment had taken the room without asking for permission. Backstage, panic started to set in. "We've lost control of the narrative," a communications director whispered. But Hillary tried to regain her composure. She smiled, practiced, and leaned into the mic. "Thank you, ladies. We appreciate all voices, even the unexpected ones. But today is about experience and continuity." The words felt hollow, like a well-rehearsed line meant to take back control, but it was too late. Karoline had shifted something much deeper than the agenda. The story spread across social media like wildfire. Karoline had stolen the summit. Hillary's post-summit interview was ignored. The headline read, "Clinton's Summit, Hijacked by Rising Conservative Star." Karoline didn't need to speak for long to make her point. In just a few minutes, she had completely rewritten the event. Even political opponents were forced to admit, whatever your politics, this was power. A week later, a message arrived in Karoline's inbox. "You took the stage. They're still talking about it. Don't stop now." There was no name, just a quiet directive. Karoline closed her laptop and smiled. She had created a moment that could not be ignored. She had become the voice that couldn't be silenced, the leader who didn't need permission.